going to start. We're right on time, and thank you all for being here on time. I'll ask those who are not our speakers to mute their microphones so we don't have background noise. I'll be doing that in a moment. I'm Rick Bell, a board member of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, and it's my privilege, my honor to welcome you all here today, Earth Day, and I hope we're celebrating the importance of that day historically and contemporaneously. The way the consortium is doing that is by inviting two distinguished practitioners in New York City to talk about an initiative. The Green Cities program of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization has focused on over 40 different cities around the world, from Lima, Peru to Paris and Copenhagen. Very few opportunities have we had to highlight the initiatives of people working in municipal government in New York or in the private industry that support them. So for those who have not been part of the Green Cities program before, or who are new to the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, I'll just take one moment to do a very brief institutional introduction, which is to say that the purpose of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, or CSU, is to promote better understanding of the role of resilient design in the planning of cities. That's what we'll be doing today. We advocate for responsible and enlightened planning and design, and are committed to making urbanization sustainable for all. Lastly, we believe that a cross-sectoral approach can improve quality of life. We focus on replicable ideas and best practices. For more information than that brief introduction, please go to our website, csu.global. And there's also an opportunity to not only see upcoming programs, but to make a contribution if you're so inclined. I should mention that our partners include, in no particular order, well, maybe in particular order, UN Habitat, the AIA New York chapter and its Planning and Design Committee, Global Urban Development, the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development New York, the Creative Exchange Lab Design Center, the Spitzer School of Architecture at City College, and last but not least, Columbia University's Center for Buildings, Infrastructure, and Public Space. Green Cities is CSU's monthly virtual lecture program that focuses on achievements in sustainability and resilience worldwide. Today's Green Cities program will focus on cloudburst mitigation, and in particular, how the New York City Department of Environmental Protection is employing adaptive stormwater management strategies in flood-prone communities, including but not limited to Kissena, Queens, a community that is adjacent to Flushing and has been plagued by flooding for decades. For this special Earth Day program, we are very pleased to welcome Andres Garcia, the Director of Stormwater Resiliency at DEP, and Karen Appel, AECOM's Vice President and Climate Adaptation Lead. I think, Andres, you've been at DEP for about 10 years, and Karen, if my memory serves, you've been at AECOM for about 17 years. We won't talk about prehistory before that, because I think what I'm most interested in hearing, and that'll be in about 30 seconds, is how you're working together, what the city is doing, and how your company, Karen, is supporting DEP's efforts. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. I think, Andres, you're up first, and I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'll ask everybody who's not speaking to do the same to get a little bit more bandwidth. We'll conclude with 10 or 15 minutes of Q&A. Please do put your questions into the chat room, and I'll repeat them and maybe combine a few if necessary. And last but not least, for those who are seeking continuing education credits, at least on the architectural side, I know that is through self-reporting to the AIA, and I presume is something similar for those who are looking for continuing education credits as engineers or landscape architects or planners. So thank you all very much for attending. Andres, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thanks, Rick, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. So again, my name is Andres Garcia, Director of Stormwater Resiliency here for the Office of Green Infrastructure and Cloudburst Design and Construction know it's a bit of a mouthful there, but that's the name of our group. And as Rick mentioned, I'll be joined by Karen Apple, who will be taking over the second half of the presentation. So today we're going to be looking at Cloudburst management design in the Kissena Cloudburst Hub. Next slide.
I'm trying. There we go.
Great. So starting with this, this will be a brief one. This slide really just kind of showcases the depth and breadth of the level of coordination that we have to do for really any of the work that my group is doing, for that matter. You know, we work with New York City DOT, parks, design and construction, New York City Housing Authority, that's NYCHA, New York City DOE, Department of Education, et cetera. But again, this is really just to showcase kind of the interconnectivity of the city of New York and how we have to work together with some of our partnering agencies as well as our design consultants to try to implement our work in an efficient way and in a way where we're respecting all the jurisdictional boundaries that you all can imagine a city like New York City has. Next slide. So a brief overview of the agenda for today. So I'll be covering the introduction. That's an introduction to Cloudburst. You know, what is Cloudburst, things of that nature. Then I'll dig in a little bit into the New York City Cloudburst Management Program itself. I'll move on from there to the Cloudburst feasibility study, which was kind of the front end of the Cloudburst program as it is being implemented today here at DEP and across the city. And at that point, I'll hand it over to Karen, who's going to get into the details of the Kissena Hub project area, the project design, as well as the community engagement. And then we'll polish it off with some Q&A at the very end. Next slide. And next slide. So starting with what is a cloudburst, right? What is a cloudburst? I like to remind myself in this way, right? High intensity, short duration. High intensity, short duration. I always remind myself of that. It's a good rule of thumb, especially that we have to handle so many different branches, so to speak, of the different initiatives the DEP is leading, right? So, for example, something else under my portfolio, which is the consent order with New York State DEC, right? So the way to really separate what is cloudburst really is by that. A lot of rain that drops down in a short amount of time. And I love that picture because it kind of really shows what you'd experience during a cloudburst, right? So they're technically supposed to be storm events that happen every 10 years or so, statistically speaking. And we'll talk about statistics a little bit later as well as related to cloudburst. But in general, even though that's statistically the expectation, you can see from some of these examples here, as we had Henry at 1.94 inches in an hour. We had Ida in 2021 as well. That's 3.15 inches in an hour. And in late September 2023, you also experienced another 2.5 inches in an hour. So these are the kinds of storm events that we could consider or would be called a cloudburst event. Next slide. So what are impacts that can be experienced by the community when it comes to cloudburst, right? What does cloudburst actually do to the community? So as you can see in this picture here, you see a small sampling of some cleanup activities that had to take place post some flooding that happened in 153rd Street here in New York. So what can cloudburst actually do? It can overwhelm, right? That's one of the main impacts. By overwhelming and surcharging the existing sewer system, that is, the pipes, the treatment plants, etc. These cloudburst events also cause more localized flooding throughout New York City, as you folks can imagine, and we'll get into kind of the visuals and the dynamics of what type of flooding we're actually trying to address with cloudburst. And last but not least, but the most obvious of all, and again related to the picture that you can see on the screen here, cloudburst flooding has caused massive damage to property, and in some cases also has caused safety threats to the communities and the public in general. Next slide. So these are the four types of floodings that can be expected take place right after one of these massive cloudburst events. So we have overland flooding, we have coastal flooding, we have groundwater flooding, and system surcharging. So these are the four main types of flooding you can anticipate from these heavy rain events. And in this next slide, what you can see is what we're really focusing on as part of our Cloudburst initiative, right? So what we can address with, and I'll get into a little bit of what types of infrastructure we're implementing for managing these Cloudburst events. But in general, we're focused on, for the Cloudburst Hub and the Cloudburst program in general that the EP is leading, we're focused on the overland flooding. So as we can see from this graphic, you can kind of read it, so to speak, from right to left. You can see at the higher elevation ground, some of these homes that are lucky enough to be in higher elevations there. A lot of the water will bypass them going downhill towards the lower lying areas. And here you can see, again, in a rather friendly illustration, the severe impacts that you can expect from these strong storm events, right? So flooded properties, flooded cars, surcharged systems, things of that nature. Next slide. So now that we know what cloudburst is, we know what is, it is a rain, very intense, during a short duration. How do we manage it, right? So during these strong, heavy rain events, we want to try to manage the cloudburst by reducing the strain in the sewer system as well. One way to approach the management of cloudburst, right? We also have a combination of gray infrastructure as well as green infrastructure, right? And I'll get into that a little bit as to how that overlap really evolved from where the green infrastructure program here that I've been a part of at DEP for the last 10 years has really evolved into these measures to be able to handle these more severe storm events. And it also helps build stormwater resiliency throughout the city, right? So of course we're planning and designing for these heavy, intense rain events, but that also means that we're able to implement this infrastructure, which is also going to provide stormwater resiliency for less severe storms than the cloudburst storm event. And it also provides, wherever possible, and where any of these cloudburst hubs are within a combined sewer service area where the sewers are combined, we will also be providing some combined sewer overflow reduction benefits. Next slide. So back to the evolution of cloudburst management, right? So rather simple formula, as we can see in the screen here, but I really want to highlight kind of how we got there, right? So starting with the green infrastructure practices that we see on the left-hand side, the left-hand list here. Rain gardens, infiltration basins, porous pavement, stormwater green streets, all these different things, all of these standard designs which are standardized and are published on our website. Most of these are anyway, are published on the DEP Green Infrastructure website. That's really where the program started, right? So this was our approach to managing the consent order goals set forth by the state and some of the milestones that we're supposed to meet and all of those different parameters that we're supposed to meet. That's really where the program started. And it really started with the very first bullet. It started with the rain gardens. That's all we had. Then eventually we had to figure out, okay, well, we have, as many of you, I'm sure, understand, New York City is an incredibly complex, hyper-urbanized environment, right? So what does that mean in terms of real estate for what you can put on the sidewalks? Not a lot, right? We have a lot of constraints, and as I explained in that first slide after the cover slide, where we have all these partnering agencies. So sometimes we have conflicting jurisdictions, sometimes we have conflicting even priorities, really. So we benefit greatly from having a constant and consistent coordination and a cooperative environment within the agency, the city's agencies, as well as the consultants that we hire to produce our work. So again, we started with the green infrastructure practices. Then there's the tried and true methods of the gray infrastructure practices, right? Sewer drains, sewer pipes, things that have been around for forever, really. Catch basins, the wastewater resource recovery facilities or treatment plants, as some still call them. So by combining these two concepts, right, the long-standing kind of traditional gray infrastructure as well as the green infrastructure practices that we've learned and refined and polished over the last 10 years, that's what gives us what we can consider cloudburst management practices. Next slide. So getting into the New York City Cloudburst Management Program itself. Next slide. We'll start with the origination of the Cloudburst Program. I'll go a little bit out of order just because the ones that I feel are a little bit more important here. So starting with the third bullet there, New York City and Copenhagen, City of Copenhagen from Denmark, created a partnership to share kind of our combined experience and approach and understanding for climate change solutions back in 2012, and us meeting them and discussing them about this was rather fitting, right? Because this was kind of post Superstorm Sandy, which was in 2012. The New York City Cloudburst Management Program itself applies this methodology that the City of Copenhagen has developed, and as you can see in the second bullet, so they implemented their first Cloudburst project in 2015. So again, we kind of start our partnership in 2012. They start implementation of their very first Cloudburst project in 2015, and we continue to this day with our partnership. And we have, sometimes they send delegates, sometimes on a yearly basis, and we meet with them and kind of keep up to date and any advances or any refinements in our approach to this very pressing issue. And then a little bit of trivia with this slide, right? So with the term cloudburst, where it comes from, it's just a direct English translation of the Danish term skybrud. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. Next slide. So starting with the initial cloudburst planning. So this was the first thing really that the city did towards this large-scale implementation of cloudburst. So the planning itself started with the Cloudburst Resiliency Planning Study, which was published in 2017. This conceptual plan, this area of focus for this study, was around Southeast Queens. The approach really was to find, as I explained before, solutions to manage these stormwater from these intense and heavy storm events, as well as any kind of everyday storm, right? Like I said, we're effectively managing up to the design storm event, which is this intense cloudburst event. We also took a look, the EP took a look with Ramble, who helped us with this planning study, integrating features to enhance the public realms, right? So a lot of times there are, and as Karen will get into later on when we are looking more into the granular details of the Kissena Hub program, on that project, excuse me, it is taking the opportunity that we have when we're going in to install these large-scale stormwater management systems. What can we do while we're at it, right? While we're there, what is it that we can do to maybe enhance, modernize, refurbish, etc. Some of the public spaces that the general public gets to enjoy. And also, as part of the planning study, was identifying pilot projects and next steps. Next slide. So starting with the Cloudburst pilot projects, I believe there's a couple others, but I'm not so directly involved with those, since those are more in collaboration with parks, and there's another lead here at DEP that handles kind of more the direct parks initiatives. But these are 3 Cloudburst pilot projects that are currently ongoing and in different stages of design and even construction. So starting with South Jamaica Houses, again, this is collaboration with New York City Housing Authority. And you can see from the lower left-hand side of the screen here, that's an example of one of the 3 stormwater management BMPs that are being implemented as far as the Cloudburst initiative here. And this project is actually in construction and about to finalize construction. If the reports I'm getting are true, I'm going to be seeing substantial completion for this in about a month's time, actually, hopefully to the day. And so, yeah, once again, going back to the lower left-hand side of the screen here, this is a basketball court that has a dual functionality, right? So it's sunken, it functions as a water square during these intense rain events. And then, so it's got surface ponding, right, for these excess flood volumes that are generated in this area. And again, this is Southeast Queens, as well as beneath the basketball court itself. We also have storage units, storage tanks, things like that. We also have the St. Albans demo project area. So that's the lower right-hand side of the screen that you see here. This was more of the kind of earlier on conceptual, but until today, it still looks this way. So in general, that is still the approach. We have some porous concrete panels. We have expanded curb lines where we're implementing stormwater green streets and all these different things. So that is currently in design. I would say about halfway through its main design leg in the schedule. And last but not least, we have Clinton Houses, which is another NYCDEP collaboration with Housing Authority here. That's another one of the ones under my umbrella here, and that one is in final design and in prep for procurement, right? So it really has reached final design at this point, but yeah, we're ready to go into procurement for that project and all the steps necessary to do that. Now, as far as the Cloudburst priority planning areas themselves, right? So 37 priority planning areas were evaluated as far as Cloudburst management opportunities. And then as part of this analysis, there were clusters of flood spots. That was 350 flood hotspots that were identified, clustered across these planning areas. And they were grouped together into what we called Cloudburst hubs, right? And there's 120 Cloudburst hubs, out of which 31 have been considered technically feasible. And I'll get a little bit into in the next slide as to what that technically feasibility, how we got there. But that's in general that the 31 areas of focus where we're looking to implement and prioritize this work. So the planning process, as I was speaking about just a moment ago, starts with a desktop analysis, really, right? So you want to complete an assessment of the physical and socioeconomic vulnerability indices in the area and identify the planning areas, right? So again, physical and social vulnerability are looked into, operational feasibility, capital project synergies, right? So once again, relating back to one of those first slides with that showcases our partnerships and how many connections we have with and collaborations we have with the other agencies. We tried to identify as part of the planning process any potential or planned projects that are coming down the pipeline that we may be able to synergize with in terms of similar timeline for implementation and things like that, right? So we want to take advantage of, if we're putting porous pavement in a main arterial road, for example, and New York City DOT is looking to expand upon it or build upon that roadway, trying to again modernize it or make it better in any way. We have coordinated with them, or at least the folks that put together our technical memos took a look at what projects, let's say DOT or DPR and so on, are doing, and see where we can synergize. And of course, there's also cost as part of the kind of front end desktop analysis. There's also feasibility studies, right? So quantifying opportunities to reduce or transfer stormwater from these flooded areas, these flood hotspots. Conduct field assessments and analyze the conditions below ground, right? So geotechnical conditions, things like that. We also have conceptual designs for the Cloudburst hubs after that, right? So it's initiating site-specific analyses and conceptual designs for the Cloudburst hubs. So just a general desktop analysis to conceptualize, okay, where can we put what in terms of what we have in our toolkit for Cloudburst management, as I expressed earlier, identifying the costs and benefits of these potential solutions as well. And last but not least, part of the planning process really is then moving on to the design and construction of the Cloudburst hubs. That's beginning the implementation of the hubs, utilizing the allocated funding and seeking external funding wherever that is available. And that's where we're at. And that's really one of the projects that we're going to be showcasing today with Kissena Cloudburst Hub. That's where we're at the design stage, right before and gearing up to a constructible plan set. Next slide. All right. So starting with the initial Cloudburst hub locations, again, these are the 4 main hubs that we're addressing right now. And today we're only going to be speaking about the second bullet. So that's Kissena, which is being led by AECOM. That's in Queens. Well, we also have Corona. It's also in Queens. We have East New York. That's another hub in Brooklyn. And then we have one in the Bronx, which is about 50-50 split, just so, for Parkchester and Morris Park as well. And so advancing the New York City Cloudburst program, what did that mean? It was really DEP's commitment to advancing innovative solutions for Cloudburst management as part of the mayor's new normal report, which was issued in November 2021. So the city really is committed has committed funding to initiating these Cloudburst mitigation projects in these 4 neighborhoods, while still pursuing any opportunities for additional funding. And now we'll get into the Cloudburst feasibility study. So starting with geotechnical and survey data, right? So we want to know what the conditions look like, kind of like I mentioned before, as part of the planning process. What are the conditions in the ground? What are we actually looking at in terms of topography, in terms of soil composition, right, and soil properties. So we had, as part of the front end with one of our other consulting firms, we had them develop boring and survey plans, and then in conjunction, collaboration with the New York City Department of Design and Construction, and thanks to their great efforts for that, they've helped us implement the actual work of these plans, right? So they've done the geotechnical investigations for us, and they've done the survey, topography, field work to provide to our Cloudburst Hub consultants. Next slide. So Cloudburst model development, I'm not going to get into this too much, as this kind of preceded my involvement with the program, and so I'm not very well versed in the actual model development itself. But what I can say again is what I understand how we got to where we're at right now, what we're able to use for our implementation of the design work in these 4 hubs and our pilot projects as well. So starting with a 1D hydrologic model, which was created as part of the DEP's LTCP, the long-term control plan. Then we went from there to a 2D hydraulic model, which depicted the surface flooding from the sewer network. And then from there, we moved on to a rain-on mesh modeling approach, which creates a more, as I see it myself, a more high definition, more refined understanding of what the surface actually looks like. And when the rain is kind of moving across the landscape, how is it behaving? Where is it accumulating, etc. Next slide. So now we understood the program, where it started, things like that, right? And I mentioned earlier on, it's an intense, short duration rain event, but what is the actual design storm event? I'm sure some of the folks on the call are more interested in the actual specifics, right? So for you guys, it would be this. Cloudburst project addresses a 2.3 inches in an hour design storm event. So that's the duration, that's the duration and intensity of storm that we're solving for as part of our program here. And it is really DEP's planning for future extreme weather by considering this projected rainfall and sea level rise between 2040 and 2069. So within those 29 years, that's where we're expecting that 2.3 inch storm event that we're solving for. And statistically speaking, again, this has got supposedly a 10% chance of happening annually between 2040 and 2069. As I'm sure many of you understand, it tends to happen sometimes more than that, sometimes less. But that's the design criteria we're solving for. And then there's the Cloudburst strategies themselves, right? So this just kind of showcases the 3, I would say the 3 main approaches to the infrastructure that we're implementing, right? So as I mentioned before, with implementation of our green infrastructure and what we've learned with our green infrastructure standardized designs, that's really the absorption component, right? Then we also have the storage component. So that's usually like tanks and subsurface storage, things like that. And there's also transfer, right? So the conveyance aspect of this kind of semi-decentralized sewer network, which is really what this Cloudburst initiative is developing. And that is by use of typical infrastructure, catch basins, drains, pipes, and things like that. Next slide. And with this, I'll hand it off to Karen, who will explain Kissena Cloudburst Hub project area.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Can you all hear me?
Yeah,
clear.
right.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So I'm going to talk about the specific for the Kissena Cloudburst Hub project area. So it's quite interesting. The area, itself has a very large drainage area for the combined sewer system. So under Kissena Corridor Park, which is the center of the project area, there's a trunk sewer mains, and these mains handle stormwater from a massive drainage area, which is 20% of Queens. So under our project area site, there is a CSO that's draining out towards Flushing Bay that manages much more stormwater than the actual project area, and it really does represent a part of the issues of why this area is so susceptible to flooding from these cloudburst events. So here's the existing project area. It's 845 acres. It consists mostly of residential with some light commercial development or buildings. And then there is a park that runs right through the center, and it's Kissena Park and then Kissena Corridor Park. There's actually two different pieces. So we are looking at working in the right-of-way areas and then a small portion of the park, which I will show you in a minute. So what is this project area like? Here's the topography. So regionally, this project is in a low point, both from historical topography, but also when the LIE was built, some of the fill from the LIE was placed in this project area. So it's also the Kissena Corridor Park and the park itself are also low in the micro topography of the location. So again, with that CSO trunk main running through, it gets a double whammy from a large drainage area, underneath, and then the actual low points within the topography. So another reason why the project area is getting hit with flooding is because of the historic hydrology. So you can see the historic, we overlaid the project area on a historic map, and you can see the historic Flushing Creek running right through the project area. And as you know, where water once flows, it wants to continue to go. So there's this natural flow path for water, stormwater, right through the project area as well. So that's the project area itself. Now let's get into the design. So here's the project timeline just to share with you. As Andres talked about, the feasibility for this specific Cloudburst hub was completed in late 2003. And then that's when AECOM was able to start working on the design for the project in early 2004. And we expect to be completed by the end of the year. And it'll take a year for procurement, and then construction is estimated to begin in 2026 and be completed by early 2028. And an important thing, is community engagement that's been happening throughout. It happened before AECOM came on. It's still happening. We've had 3 of 5 community meetings that are scheduled for the design piece. And it's been a very spirited group that we're working with who really care about their community and the flooding issues that are occurring and that they've been living through. So these are the 2 design areas. I was saying this before, just, here's a view of what they are. So there's a right-of-way design area on the top, and you can see this is all the places where there are right-of-way opportunities for potential cloudburst infrastructure. And then we're also dealing, or we also have the opportunity to work in this small piece of Kissena Corridor Park, which we call the on-site. That's the name kind of given, the lingo for cloudburst work, where anywhere that's on like a park property or another public property, we call that on-site. And we're doing 2 different things in these 2 areas. So I'll start with the on-site. So this is a rendering of the existing conditions. So there's an existing wetland, there's existing open space with cricket fields, there's an existing restroom.
We lost you for a second there, Karen.
I think I accidentally got muted. Hold on, let me just. So there, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you can see that there's other park areas that we're abutting against. And so, we really have to coordinate with the Parks Department, DOT, the local community about the things we're doing in this on-site area. So what we're looking at right now are flood mitigation measures, some subsurface drainage storage in the park. And then, if we're going to be modifying the park, we're looking to bring park improvements and additional public amenities in. And that's part of the community engagement we've been doing, and then also a lot of the coordination we've been doing with parks. So as Andres mentioned before, you shoot. As Andres mentioned before, there's opportunities throughout the on-site and right-of-way areas to improve the community. You're in there doing the work. You might as well take the opportunity to improve the public amenities, improve the right-of-way areas, and add some things to these communities. Besides the flood mitigation infrastructure. So here's a typical future right-of-way in Kissena. The on-site area is one area we're looking at, and then the right-of-ways. So you can see here, the rain's coming down, it's coming from the street, it's coming from the downspouts, and what is depicted in the yellow color is the actual porous concrete panels. They're precast that we would be installing in the parking lane. And it could be on one side as it is here, or it could be on both sides of the street. They can also go in bike lanes. There's just a little bit different treatment you do to deal with, to allow for the paint and the colors that the biking lanes required. And so you can see here, the whole purpose is for the water to flow into this porous concrete material. And then it goes down into drainage cells. And these drainage cells act as, so the absorb that Andres was talking about, it's absorbed into the porous concrete in this case. It is stored in the drainage cells. They do provide some bit of storage, and then it transfers the water back to the existing sewer system. And there's a couple different ways that this can be connected to the system. So here's an example that DEP used. This was used in the green infrastructure programs. So pre Cloudburst, you can see here the porous pavement in the parking lane, and it has the under drain, in this case underneath the parking lane and the bikeway. And you can see the water is entering and absorbed into the porous concrete, and then is stored and route transferred downstream to an existing catch basin or existing sewer system. And then on the left-hand side, you can see, a traditional catch basin with, where it flows into the combined sewer. So this was designed for a smaller storm event that Green Infrastructure Program was trying to mitigate for. And so when DEP moved to the Cloudburst program, they wanted to mitigate for a larger storm. They wanted to receive flows and install infrastructure that could handle a larger storm. So as Andres was talking before, the porous pavement is the green infrastructure piece. And then in the Cloudburst system, you're connecting it more frequently to the gray infrastructure on the other side. And, this is a figure that it shows, but this actually does happen in real life as well. That the flooding is lessened because you're able to capture a larger volume of storm because the drainage cell is connected to the combined sewer system. And what happens is the drainage cell can store more volume and not overwhelm the existing system. As the storm progresses, and then as the rain stops, and additional flows can flow out through the existing system. And so the final thing I wanted to talk about is community engagement. So each hub has a robust community engagement program. We're all following the same Cloudburst engagement goals that were established by DEP, which, there's an informing phase, there's a listening phase in our community engagement events, and then there's there's a participation phase as well, where we take what we've heard from the community when we've listened. They understand more about what's going on with the Cloudburst program, and then we take their input through the design process. And this is input that happens both in design meetings. We're meeting open house design meetings that we have in the communities. We're meeting with community groups. We're passing out flyers and getting feedback through tabling events in the park and other areas around the hub. And we really DEP it's really important to them to establish these relationships to the communities so that they're getting the information they need, they feel heard, and they can ask all the questions of DEP and their partners of what's going on in my neighborhood, how are you helping me, what storm, do you know what's happened, and they really feel like a part of the process, which is part of the goal of this program. So our community engagement timeline, like I said, in the design phase, there were 5 specific events that we had. So as I mentioned, the listening stage started in the very beginning. Community meeting 1, we had a virtual meeting, and then we shared in person project visioning work with the community in early summer 2024. We had our last community meeting was a design charrette where we were able to explain a little bit more of our plans for design and then get very specific feedback from the community, both on the public amenities and the locations and are proposing for the right-of-ways. And then this actually is now moving to, it just actually happened a couple weeks ago that we are moving the fourth meeting into the summer of 2025, and our final presentation will be late summer or early fall 2025. So here's a great example of, the community engagement events, where the online workshop, we did just a general introduction. That was the event, meeting event 1. The listening workshops where we presented the information, management tools, existing conditions, et cetera. And then had these tabling events in Kissena Park in between the more formal community events, where we really got to hear from residents that were, walking by the tables or just in the neighborhood that we might not have captured during the formal events. And we also had tabling ideas and sat around and discussed specific areas in the hub that were important to the community. And so this has been a really great community engagement program that we've been able to build upon from what DEP has done in the past, and been grateful to DEP and parks and multiple bureaus within DEP that have been involved in these events. So I'm going to end there, and I'll let Rick take things back over for questions.
Well, thank you, Karen, and thank you, Andres. Both excellent presentations, and it's great that you could both be here and talk about what it's like, both from the client side, from the public sector side, and from the perspective of a company like AECOM doing that work. I have many questions, but I'm going to go right to the chat room and encourage people who have questions for either of you to address them in the chat room. I will combine them or elaborate on them, or just thank you for them. And the first one is from an architect, Chanel Flores, who's worked in New York and London and California as a sustainability expert. Great question about filtration. And maybe it's you, Andres, but Karen, yeah, feel free. Filtration, does it happen in the drainage cells?
So direct answer to that, I would say no, if I understand the question correctly. I think this is being asked in terms of, filtration as related to, let's say, if you were in an MS4 area and you have to do, filtration of the system. Hopefully I understood Chanel's question with that. So that being the case, no, the drainage cells don't offer any sort of filtration capability, because they're really, what they really look like is those kind of old school milk crates, those like plastic milk crates with the numerous kind of crisscrossing members or lines or whatever you want to call them. So they really just do look like that, kind of like these big milk crates. So they don't give you any filtration capability. Having said that, the porous pavement that's above them, and this can even be referenced, I think, even to this day, still the New York State, New York State DEC, that's Department of Environmental Conservation's stormwater design manual, as it relates to the like MS4 compliance for them. They do consider porous pavements to have filtration capacity or capabilities for, organics, heavy metals, things like that.
I'd like to just elaborate on the question and talk a little bit more about the techniques of the storage cells themselves. The drawings were evocative and give an idea of location, especially in parking lanes. But what's the scale? There are no dimensions on the drawings. They were necessarily diagrammatic, but how much water is actually stored? Does it vary from street to street? What are the techniques of the storage cells themselves in terms of capacity?
I think the way I like to kind of showcase why we're even using the drainage cells to begin with, right? So originally, the porous pavement design that we have, and what you will find in our published standards, has a standardized depth, 2 feet deep. And it used to be just, the porous panels with a leveling course to level it out, and then the reservoir stone, and it was just stone underneath, right? And so as some of us on the call who are familiar with like stormwater infrastructure, BMPs, and things like that, right? You're usually using, poorly graded large stone that gives you big, large volume porosity, right? So typical stone number 57, something that you'd use for an infiltration or a storage system, would give you about, what is it, like 40 to 50% roughly, right? In its volume capacity. Well, the drainage cells were used to just expand upon that. So that gives you about 90% void space, right? So we're taking up about, so now there are several drainage cells from several manufacturers, but the ones that we've used so far, and we have installed some already, are about these standardized cells are 2-inch tall, 2 inches tall, by like 20 inches by 24 inches, something like that. That's roughly one stack of drainage cells, right? So we have, for the 2-foot deep sections, we have about maybe 4 or 5 stacks that we can fit in there. And then for Cloudburst, we're opening up the standard or the design for Cloudburst. We can go as deep as 5 feet. So, maybe not directly answer your question in numbers, Rick,
Yeah,
but it
no,
really is
and
based
I
on
could
location.
imagine there's some variability depending on condition where utilities are and so forth, tree roots. But you both mentioned collaboration with other city agencies, and I noticed in looking at the roster of people who were on the call, a number of people from DDC, where I used to work, perhaps from Parks and DOT as well. Clearly, for the roadbed, DOT must be very much involved. What are the parameters that they might insist on? Is it utility location? Where disturbances, parks get involved if there are street trees? What's the nature of that collaboration?
So we have, let's say, so we already have developed, as what I was saying earlier in the presentation, right? When I said that we're kind of piggybacking off of our 10-year experience that we've had with our green infrastructure program itself, right? For the consent order with the state. So we have which is in our website. We have a standard set. It's called the New York City Green Infrastructure Siting Criteria, I believe is what the document is called. And that's something that we've kind of developed that over the years. So at this point, it's not so much DOT or DPR kind of asking us to do stuff. It's more than anything during the design review process, because we've collaborated with them for so long with our siting criteria. We know what to stay away from and how far, right? So there's certain standards for how far from a lighting post. Obviously we can't put something with a surface expression in front of somebody's entryway or a driveway, of course, right? So it's kind of obeying all of these parameters that we've worked through and together with intra and interagency. We also have to deal with DEP, Bureau of Water Sewer Operations. So they give us, for example, criteria for how far to stay away from sewer mains or water mains and things like that, right? And then during the reviews themselves, yes, so of course, Parks is heavily involved. DOT are heavily involved. We share with them every stage of design. We have kind of our counterparts, and we share with them 60%, a 90%, 100%. And then they just give us feedback based on what their criteria are, right? So DOT sometimes might say, hey, you're coming close to a ped ramp, and that's a ped ramp that hasn't yet been upgraded to meet ADA compliance. Okay, I need you guys to, as part of your work, you're doing your porous pavement, I want you to also do that ped ramp. With Parks, it's a similar thing. So because kind of like what Karen was showing for Kissena Quarter Park, because we're developing the infrastructure within that park, we're working closely with them to make sure that whatever amenities we're suggesting or proposing at the surface meet their requirements and their standards for whatever it is, pathways or turf fields and things like that.
Karen, you mentioned community engagement, and I thank you for that. It's intriguing collaboration, especially as Andres was mentioning, given the risks and vulnerabilities that were identified, both personal and property. What kind of feedback would you say is most important in terms of the input into the design process that AECOM's undertaking? What have you or your team heard that has influenced the design in a positive way?
It's twofold. I think the first piece is for the park. They're very interested in what the amenities will be, the entrances to the park. Will the cricket fields remain or not remain? Trees. Trees are a big deal because of removals in other areas. So that has been a big part of that. For the right of way, they're really interested in, where they're going, where the infrastructure is going to be. How is it going to help? Will you fix the catch basins that are not working well? Will DEP clean out the catch basins more often? They've uh, looked at, what will the porous pavement look like? Will I be able to get to my driveway during construction? These bike lanes are great. Please don't disrupt them. So it's really run the gamut, and all of it's been valuable. A lot of the work that we've also done per DEP's request is inform the community. So, DEP itself has done a lot of different events. The commissioner came out to Kissena a few different times to talk specifically to the residents who, again, are very spirited about their community. And then, we've been able to talk about specific Cloudburst work, but there's other work going on that DEP is doing as well. So everything.
Oh, it's sort of music to my ears, and it's good to know that listening isn't going through the motions, that it actually has a palpable impact on the design process. There's a question in the chat room from Elizabeth McSweeney from Ramble that kind of talks to that, because Karen, you were talking about is part of the community engagement. I won't say hearing feedback on where drainage isn't working currently. Elizabeth's question is, quote unquote, is there a plan to include post-construction monitoring to identify the efficiency and performance of the system? We hear complaints now when things aren't working. What's the plan going forward? Either DEP or
I can take that one. Yeah,
yeah,
I would say for this one, kind of yes and no. So as part of our design, their standard design for the and I gotta double check that too. But as part of the standard design, at least for the porous concrete, I do know that we have observation wells. Right. So those observation wells are just remain in place, and we're able to access them and do flood tests and things like that. The reason why I say kind of yes and no is because we've kind of already gone through that. We do still have we have some an R&D arm here, for example, a Bureau of Sustainability that focuses on kind of these like research projects and putting in telemetry in maybe some of our older bioswales and rain gardens, see if they're functioning, and stone columns and the porous pavement. They help us put together testing protocols, things like that. But over the last 10 years, since the implementation of the Green Infrastructure Program, we have been kind of doing these tests. And so we're kind of comfortable with the performance, and knowing that we can report. And as part of our day, in fact, tomorrow is going to be one of our yearly reportings that we do to the state with respect to the consent order program, or part of the program anyway. So long story short, yeah. So we do monitor and we do figure out the efficacy of the systems, but the green infrastructure that we've built off of for our Cloudburst initiative, we've kind of already tested and continue to test to this day.
Yeah, no, and at the beginning you were talking about moving in terms of risk assessment and understanding conditions in the field from a fairly simple one-dimensional or two-dimensional system to something you were describing as rain-on-mesh methodology. And I have to admit, you lost me on that one, and maybe others in the audience. I understand it as some more dynamic form of modeling. Is that something that both DEP and AECOM are doing? How does that work?
So everything is based on a model that we already have, and then our consultants are doing with the rain-on-mesh model. So my understanding, and albeit it might itself be limited, right? Because I don't get into the weeds that some of the engineers themselves do, and some of the colleagues that Karen has, very, very smart guys. My understanding of it is you're just creating a net of triangles that create this kind of high resolution, so to speak, surface model. So that way you can figure out kind of on a microcosm scale how the water behaves with the existing conditions. And then when you design what we're designing as part of the work, what Karen and her team are doing, they'll put new boundary conditions to determine, okay, hey, here's a stretch of porous pavement, and here's a stretch of subsurface tanks, and all these different things. And then they rerun that basic model that we already have based on these new boundary conditions, and then see how it changes in its behavior, whether or not we are actually capturing, whether or not we're providing relief to the sewers, things like that. Hopefully that answered your question, Rick.
Yeah, I have one more question, and in the absence of others from the chat room, I'll ask it before giving you both the last word. Continuity on any infrastructure project that spans electoral cycles. Andres, you started in the stormwater management role at DEP before Mayor Adams was elected. One of your slides clearly shows him in his role as mayor, and who knows what will happen next. I won't try to predict this or recording going on. And I'd like to think it doesn't matter, that the project is committed, it's going to continue. But do priorities change, either in terms of identifying geographic areas of focus, communities to get resources? What's been your experience at DEP?
No, in my experience, it hasn't changed, and I would say the reason for that is, again, at least because Cloudburst is kind of up and coming, right? We could say that's new, but let's say, for example, the Green Infrastructure Program, which is the concept of which is what we're following for Cloudburst. Again, we've been around for 10 years doing this work. Like you said, we've gone through, De Blasio and Eric Adams and whoever's going to come next. And because we have these long-term goals that we have to meet with the state, otherwise we get penalized. There's not a lot of room for flexibility. What's been identified, if anything, we kind of refine more and more, and we try to, with newer administrations, try to see if we can outline any better strategies or goals to still approach these milestones in a better, more efficient way. But in general, there's largely no real change towards those goals and meeting them.
And Karen, I'd like to give you the last word. I'm intrigued by, the balancing between transferring, storing, absorbing. Is there a pattern that dictates in any given neighborhood in your experience or in Kissena in particular, what can be done, and how do you and your colleagues, the engineers that Andres was referring to, make those decisions? What's the process?
Well, I mean, Cloudburst, like Andres has been talking about, has the measures that have come from the Green Infrastructure Program. Those standards are already in place. So, and we may have to modify them based upon existing conditions. And we may have to fit them into a constraint that we come across. But absorbing can be a porous pavement. It could be infiltration into the ground. In some cases, the drainage cells can infiltrate into the ground. It all depends on the subsurface conditions. Absorbing can also be through vegetation, whether that's a street median or a park. And then the storage can be the drainage cells themselves, conveyance pipes, subsurface drainage. Um, Tanks, it can be infiltration basins. The rain gardens have a little bit of storage, and then the transfer can be it's mostly focused on pipes and it could be open channel waterways if you do like a daylighting. So we have this suite of tools that DEP's provided. We also have our experience in both in New York City and other places of how to apply these tools. And it's kind of like a menu that you would go into with a restaurant and pick what's most efficient and cost effective for the specific area.
Well, thank you both for a superb presentation. There have been some compliments in the chat room that you could see, and I'll share from one of our co-sponsors, Jasmine Hebert from Creative Exchange Lab, and others. I would echo those and invite those who are new to this program to join us for subsequent Green Cities and Green Books talks and our celebratory awards gala for people in the trenches come October. Karen, thank you. Andres, thank
Happy
you.
Earth Day.
And happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day, folks.
Good to see you all.
All right.
Happy
Thanks so
Earth
much.
Day, and thank you
Recording
very
of
much.
this will be available on our CSU website for those colleagues who are not able to attend or if you missed part of it. But again, thanks for all who are here. Goodbye all.
Excellent. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.